yeah. And
Tried my best. I always try. I always say that I always try to sort of break people's heart, but I always try and put it back together. I always try and
mend it
fix
again
them by the end.
afterwards. Oh, you definitely did that. Although there was a point where I was thinking, oh, we're live. We are live on Facebook.
uh,
So, good evening, and thank you for coming along this evening for this in conversation with Emma Cooper. Emma, and I've got her book here in front of me, this beautiful If I Could Say Goodbye, is her third book. She is a full-time writer and also a mum of four.
yeah.
Thank you for coming along this evening, Emma.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, we originally met in January, didn't we, when you came to the library in real life before COVID, which seems like a million years ago.
It does. All those people and all the train journeys and things, yeah, it just seems so abstract now, doesn't it? I can't believe that.
And you went on a real little tour. You'd been on a tour, hadn't you, with Jill and it was Jill Mansell and Libby Page.
Yeah.
And
I never thought I'd ever hear those words, let me tell you that.
Because actually your journey as a writer was, you were a teaching assistant, weren't you, before?
Yeah.
So do you want to sort of tell us a little bit about how you became to be a full-time writer? Because actually being a full-time writer is quite a thing, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's a dream that I don't think I ever really thought would happen to me, really. I was working in school. I was a teaching assistant and I was a lunchtime supervisor for a little while. And I started to write, I wanted to write a story about something to do with music. I love music. And so I wanted to write a story about music, but I didn't quite know how to do it. And I was working as a lunchtime supervisor at the time, and my son was sitting amongst his friends, and he was, about 10, being very, with his lads. And just as a mom, I just bent down and kissed the top of his head, and he was like just so embarrassed. It was awful. So I had this spark, like, what about a mom that couldn't control embarrassing her kids? So that's where I had the idea for the Songs of Us. But when you're working and you've got 4 kids, life is very busy. So I set myself a task of 500 words a day, which sounds like nothing to me, not nothing to me now, but I can do that sort of, early in the morning. So I used to write 250 words at lunchtime, and then 250 words when I got home. And then, and then like at the end of the week, you've got a chapter, and in 9 months I had a book. And so then I started submitting to agents and publishers, and I just got rejection after rejection after rejection. And I didn't go to university. I had no contact with the publishing industry at all, had no idea how it worked, or, no way in really, no sort of friends. But I wish that I had have known now, then what I know now. And the writing community online is amazing. There's so much support out there, but I was just very sort of clueless to it all, I suppose. So I had loads of rejections, and then in the February, I'd almost given up, and I really, really genuinely mean I was this close to giving up, because it's when you haven't got those qualifications, and I haven't been on any writing courses, it was very easy to believe that I just wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
But then I get an email from my agent, my now agent, saying that she loved it to send the whole book, because I didn't even get a request for the whole manuscript, because you send the first 3 chapters.
It must be so soul destroying to just...
It really is.
I guess you do question yourself, don't you, about whether like you say, am I good enough? And I know lots of people say about imposter syndrome, and I guess
and I still get that all the time. I still feel like I shouldn't really be here. So she sent me this, and then she sent me this email, and she said that I was an incredible writer, and she wanted to find the best home, the best publisher for the book. From her, it's really funny actually, because I've actually spoken to my agent about this, and from her side of the story, she was about to go on holiday, and she finished the end of the Songs of Us, her glasses were broken, and she said she was lying in bed holding her glasses up like this, sobbing, sent me this email and was like, refresh, and I can't go on holiday until, I think, so like from my point of view, they're almost like godlike literary agents. So I obviously responded. So I'd be absolutely delighted. And then it was very, very fast after that. So that was the March. And then I had preempted offers from Germany and Italy, and it was in a 6-way auction in France. And I had other, and my offer here in the UK. And then by the end of the summer term, by the July, I was able to leave my job and become a full-time writer.
That's amazing, isn't it?
It was it really, it's still now, it's just like it really is a dream. I never ever thought that would happen. It's, yeah.
And what year was that? Was that sort of
2017? The Songs Awards came out in 2018.
So that's really amazing. So you've had a book a year?
Yeah, still going.
Still going. So shall we talk a little bit about this book, If I Could Say Goodbye? And I guess you're the best person to talk about what it's about. But all I'll say is that it's not the first time that you've reduced me to tears. In a good way. Your books are very emotional and very true to life, and the characters are very engaging, and you become really sort of in love with them, and you feel part of them. So I'll let you talk about Jen and Ed and Kerry and Nessa.
Yeah, it's quite hard. I always find this the hardest thing to do, actually. So If I Could Say Goodbye is a story about Jen and her husband Ed, and she has 2 children. She's very in control of her life. She's one of those moms that I would quite like to be. She's really organised. The house is all tidy. No, I'm not like that.
I was thinking Mrs. Hinch when you were saying that.
Yeah. She was adopted, and then her adopted parents got pregnant naturally, and she had a little baby sister called Kerry, and Jen and Kerry are very, very, very close. And what happens at the very beginning of the story, there's no spoilers here because it's on the blurb, is that Kerry is killed in a road accident, and what actually happens is she pushes her sister out of the way. So the story of If I Could Say Goodbye is how Jen and Ed and her children and Kerry's partner Nessa cope with this loss. And I know that makes it sound really, really sad, but there is lots and lots of fun along the way as well, because Jen has this sort of survivor's guilt, and also this feeling of she needs to make the most of her life. Her sister saved her, so she needs to make the most of her life, which sort of makes her a little bit more adventurous with her husband, and she does like road.
It made me really laugh. That's what it was. And as you said, I looked at the reviews, because obviously I was lucky enough to be on the blog tour for If I Could Say Goodbye.
Thank you. Your review was lovely. I'm so grateful for it.
Thank you. But it is very sad, but it is also heartwarming and heartbreaking, people were saying, and it's warm and witty, beautifully observed, it's tender, it's all of those things. It's a really interesting look at grief and how it manifests itself. With the relationship between Jen and Kerry, I wondered, because I'm a big sister, I wondered whether you think that, I thought, did Jen feel extra guilty because she is the older sister and she sort of felt that responsibility? Are you a sister? I don't know whether you...
Yeah, I am a sister. I've got a younger brother.
You're an older sister too.
Yeah. And I think as well with Jen, although she always felt very much part of her family, she never felt like she was treated differently because she was adopted. She had this really wonderful, the Hargreaves family are just wonderful, and they never make her feel adopted. But I think in the back of her mind as well, it's that it was very unfair that their natural daughter was taken and they were left with like the older adopted daughter, and her parents never make her feel that, but that's just what's niggling away in Jen's mind as she starts to sort of become unravelled by her guilt and her grief.
Because I think in the beginning, Ed doesn't really, he knows something's not quite right, doesn't he? Because, she's acting in a way that's, without giving any spoilers, she acts a bit out of character. But then it's actually quite a long time down the road, isn't it, until he really realises that she's gone away, in a way, she's not there anymore.
And I think it's quite difficult for people who are sort of suffering from their grief, because he loved Kerry as well, and he's sort of suffering from his own grief as well. And I think it's quite hard to know how to but support somebody who is grieving quite as deeply as Jen is. But quite like, as you say, he's in a bit of denial, isn't he, sometimes, because she's a bit up and down, so sometimes he thinks, it's fine, she's fine, But yeah, as it sort of carries on, he knows that actually no, she's not fine. I
There was
love
times
Ed.
I wanted to. I did really love him, but there were one times where I just wanted to shake him a bit and go, "For goodness sake!"
I read. Yeah, I had somebody say that they just wanted to scream at him, "Take her to therapy."
Yeah. Well, he does. He tries, doesn't he, to sort of
Yeah,
get
he
her to go
does.
to the doctors and things. But yeah, there was points where, like, when he realises that she's not been taken, or the kids have been late to school, and the housework's not being done, and he sort of, yeah, he doesn't. But I think it's probably he just doesn't know what to do. I sort of felt sorry for him in a way that he just didn't know what to do with her.
No, and he finds himself googling, doesn't he? And
I thought that was really funny. The googling, it's like all the different things. Did you want to read a little bit from If I Could
I
Say
can
Goodbye?
do. What I shall do is I'm going to jump into not the very first part. I'm going to jump into this is after Kerry has died. It's a few months later. Jen, as I said, she's starting to sort of try and live her life. She's been a little bit more adventurous with her husband, and this is a scene where she's in the kitchen with her mum. So I'll just read that. I've got a bit of a frog in my throat, so apologies for that. Right. Do you wish it was me? I ask Mum. The words leave their confinement. They bound from my lips, hitting Mum's face, marking it with 2 angry red blotches. She tastes the bitterness behind them and pulls her mouth into a knot. We are not having this conversation, she replies, taking the pen from my fingers and scraping the newspaper across the table. I understand if you do, I continue. Mum slams the pen down, making the sugar cubes inside their bowl jump up, momentarily suspended mid-air in shock before descending back into sweet chaos. I loved you both equally. Her voice is steady, a statement, not a clause. I would be mourning you in the same way. I'm sorry. I place a hand on her shoulder. Her head nods in response, but the subject tugs me. If you could have your time with her again, would you do anything different? No. I treasured every moment of my time with her from the day she was born. I was never supposed to have her in the first place, so any time I got was a gift. You can't let your life slip through your fingers, Jennifer. The door slams on my sentence. Jen? I'm in the kitchen, I reply, and turn to flick the kettle back right on. Right, Ed's voice announces. I've got half an hour before I have to get back to work, so brace yourself, wife of mine. His voice becomes muffled, a sound that I'm guessing is stifled from somewhere beneath his clothing. I'm about to make your dreams come true. Realization dawns as I halt my tea-making activities. Ed, I try to intervene, but it's pointless, because Ed is naked. Naked, except for one of those cardboard cutout celebrity masks. No, shrieks my mother, while I begin to laugh, a deep vibration that tickles and steals my breath and bends me over. Channing Tatum's 2-dimensional smiling face is pushed backwards, the elasticated thread securing it so that the mask now rests on the crown of Ed's head. His mouth is open wide, his eyes are bulging, and a flush of embarrassment floods his cheeks. Judith, he questions, covering his family jewels with a cardboard mask of my chosen alter ego, Kylie Minogue. Edward, I was just going. I'll just grab my bag. She shields her eyes, but even in my incapacitated state, I can tell that she is taking in what I have long since neglected to appreciate. His broad shoulders, the smattering of blonde hair that trails along his chest, leading down towards Miss Minogue's grinning face. I'll let myself out, she continues, chewing her bottom lip. Ed reverses his bare behind, his bum cheeks quivering white globes beneath his tan line. I follow Mum out through the door and into the hall towards the door. Her hand hesitates on the door frame as she leans in and kisses me on the cheek. Don't let me keep you from your afternoon delight, she smirks as I close the door behind her. I hesitate past the doorway to the lounge, where Kerry is sitting on the sofa eating ice cream out of a tub. She scrapes the bottom with a blue plastic spoon that is identical to the ones we used to use at the cinema. Her lips pull the ice cream from the spoon, which she then points at me as she talks. I never really got the attraction with Kylie. She taps her front tooth with the blue plastic, a replica of the day we went to see The Notebook. Rachel McAdams, on the other hand. She winks at me in the same way as she had years ago. I'd been swooning over Ryan Gosling. He's not really my type, she'd said. Rachel McAdams, on the other hand. It was the first time she had openly talked about being gay. She would have been about 15, I think. Channing Tatum walks towards me. Has your mother gone? Yes. Good. Now come here. I've only got 25 minutes left. I look back to the sofa where Kerry's image has been replaced by the crushed velvet cushions, which are so big that we can't actually sit on the sofa with them on. I throw them onto the floor and pull my dress from my shoulders, leaving it pooling around my ankles as I lower myself onto the cushions. Channing Tatum struts towards me, but I reach for him, throwing his startled face across the room. I don't want him. I want you, I say, wrapping my legs around my husband's waist.
Thank you for reading that.
Okay, with pleasure.
I'm just checking to see whether we've got any questions. Is there anybody who would like to ask Emma some questions about the book or about the songs of us?
Songs of Us,
yeah. And you know, I cannot remember. I wrote them all down.
The first time I saw you.
The first time I saw you, I've got it here. Yes, because that was the first one that made me cry. Did you? Because obviously the book deals with really sensitively Jen's grief, but also what grief does to her, and trying not to give away too many spoilers, but it significantly changes her mental well-being, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Because you obviously did you speak to professionals about how that how grief manifested itself, or did you do research? Or
yeah, well, I did lots of research online, and there's a condition called complicated grief, which I did a lot of research on. But whenever I write my stories, I've heard like some writers say they try and think about what their characters would do, and I think that's the way some writers work. But for me, I am that character as I write. So that sounds really stupid, doesn't it? But I always say that my characters tell me the story, I just write it down. And so I felt very much in Jen's head. And I think because Jen was this perfect mom, she's always get all the plates spinning and her house is all tidy. And I think what happened with people like that, sometimes I think sort of hidden worries and anxieties there. And I think that sometimes grief is such a powerful emotion, but not only grief, guilt is such a powerful emotion that I think that's what starts to unravel Jen, and that's what sort of really affects her mental health, is this constant grief, this constant guilt, and this constant sort of feeling that she has to make her life somehow spectacular.
She definitely she sort of really decides, doesn't she, that she's got to, because she feels that guilt of Kerry going, and that she has to almost like live her life and Kerry's as well, because Kerry was younger and was quite outgoing and didn't have children and was, just beginning to start her life with Nessa.
And I think that Jen also, she sort of felt that everybody wanted to be like Kerry. She was so enigmatic, she was so beautiful, she was so sort of unique. And I think that Jen sort of just felt Jen was very sort of ordinary. That's how Jen felt anyway, is that she was just ordinary and very run of the mill. So I think that's quite a lot for one person to cope with.
I think it's difficult, isn't it, to know how everybody's, like you say, grief people handle it differently, but in this book she really does go on a rocky road, doesn't she, with and also the fact that she that nobody sort of believes what she's going through, do they? So they don't really understand it, and I guess it's quite difficult to understand. You'll have to read the book and find out if you haven't read it. But
she has to keep quite a lot of it hidden. At the very beginning of the book, and you've heard in the bit that I've just read, that she does have these sort of beginnings, like at the beginning of the book, they're sort of memories, very, very vivid memories of her sister. And I think she's very aware that how balmy that might sound to some people. So she keeps that very much to herself for quite a while. And
also the character of Nessa is really interesting, isn't she? I really liked her. And she sort of brings out I think their relationship is quite interesting, isn't it? Because in the beginning she doesn't want anything to do with her, does she? She can't cope with seeing her, but then they gradually have a friendship. And that's like, I like that side of the story. That there's that particular scene in the paddling pool, hot tub thing in the garden
with the Macarena.
That is quite. Did you? It's difficult, isn't it? When you write, you said you become the characters. Do you start with an idea for a book and sort of, because as they always say, there's the planners and the pantsers, isn't there? So are you a planner or a pantser?
Well, I'm definitely a pantser, but I have recently just changed, and it's not by intent. I've always tried to be a planner, and it just doesn't work. I'm naturally a very, very disorganized person, so the idea of sort of putting everything down and knowing where everything's going is quite difficult for me. I find it a really, really difficult process. So with my other books, I'll have like a glimmer, and I just sort of dive in quite irrationally really and start writing and just think, oh, I'll sort that out later, I'll sort that out. Like, and then at the end of the manuscript, like the first edit stage, I end up with quite a hefty word count and a lot of things that need sorting out. But recently, for my next book, for my next Emma Cooper book, I had the idea when I was walking on the beach, and I wasn't really thinking about planning a book or anything. I was just walking, had my headphones on, listening to music, and I had the idea for my next book, and it was just fully formed. I just had a backstory for all the characters. I had the beginning scene. I could see what was going to happen in the middle. I could see the end scene. I could see, the tagline for the front of the book. It just came like a whole thing. So I got home, got back to the caravan. I wrote everything down, and got in touch with my agent, and she absolutely loved it. And so this time I've actually got a big planning sheet, and I'm sticking post-it notes, and it's an amazing experience for me, because normally if my editor or my agent or my partner Russell, he's my first editor, he always looks at my manuscripts first and he will pull them apart. He can be very brutal. He shouts and cheers the loudest when I'm doing well, but he's very, very thorough. And so normally if they ask me a question sort of halfway through the manuscript, well, what's going to happen such and such, and I'll just be, I don't know, I haven't written that bit, but this time I've got quite a lot of answers. So yeah, it's a really new experience for me. It writes much quicker as well. I'm writing it much quicker because I have this entire plan. But I'm not sure whether I'll be able to do that again. I think it just sort of happened this time. Whether it'll happen like that again, I don't know.
I can't remember which author it was. I think it might have been Callie Taylor that had said that she was once in the supermarket, and an idea came to her for like a whole book, and she said that I think she was pregnant at the time, and she said it had never happened since, or so maybe it's maybe it's not, hopefully it's not a once in a lifetime.
Yeah, it's really nice. I really like having all these answers, but I do like the process of just sort of diving in and letting your characters just unfold.
I wonder whether in some ways that it's to do with the creative sort of process, that you were really relaxed when you were sort of walking along the beach, and so your mind was free.
That's right. I listened to an interview with Sherry LePenna on the Honest Authors podcast, and she was saying that she doesn't plan either, and I find that quite fascinating for a thriller writer. I thought that you'd have to plan, and she was sort of saying about the two differences between the unconscious mind and the conscious mind. And if you're a planner, you're very much there in the conscious mind, whereas the unconscious mind is the part that controls all your dreams and different things like that. So I do wonder actually if it was just because I was supposed to be having a week off, and my agent said have a week off, because I've been working non-stop. I worked all the way through lockdown. So yeah, I think you're probably right. I think it probably was just because I was completely relaxed.
I know that I have quite a lot of my sort of good ideas when I'm either sort of in the bath or like in the middle of the night. So I know that that's when my brain is quiet and I'm not busy and thinking about other things. So it definitely sort of teaches us the lesson that we should find a quiet time. I think although if you have it and you're sort of planning to think I'll have a quiet time, it won't come. Well, it has to be that sort of moment of just complete sort of zoning out.
I often hear that a lot of writers find if they've got a plot hole, they'll find that they'll be washing up or in the shower, and all of a sudden that'll.
I think Agatha Christie something about that. She used to find quite a lot of her plots came when she was doing the washing up. It's good enough for Agatha. It's good enough for me.
It certainly is. Yeah.
I have got a question for you. So, a question from Katrina. Do you think you'll write a story that includes a lockdown pandemic?
Oh, that's a toughie. I think that I probably will, but I don't think it'll be for a while, because I don't think I want to be in that world right now. I quite like being able to escape that world. But yeah, I think I probably will in the future. Yeah, because it's just a mad time, isn't it? So many things are changing, and it's just little things. Like I noticed my daughter, she's 7, and she sneezed the other day, or if she coughs, and it's straight into her arm like that, and I thought that'll probably stay with her for the rest of her life, and it'll probably be passed down generations, I'd imagine. My niece
got off the bus last week. She came for tea last week, and she got off the bus, and they all got off the bus. She's a year 7, with their masks on, and I just thought that's just so bizarre. You know, it's just,
Yeah.
they are going. Yeah, they'll totally. I mean, at 7, she'll totally remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just such a strange time for them, isn't it? Having all their lessons online before, and but I think the one thing I sort of saw was that they all looked really happy when they were getting off the bus, even though they all had their masks on.
Yeah, they're incredibly resilient, aren't they? I think they take it a little bit easier than we do.
Yeah, I can see why you would probably want to. I think you would have to be quite brave to want to do it in lockdown, you know, now, wouldn't you? Because
yeah, it's a tricky time. I wrote a different book during lockdown, and it was. It will be coming out sort of at a different time in my career. It's a little bit more quirky, and it's sort of almost verging on magical realism. And I think that the reason it ended up being like that is because I was just escaping. I just jumped into the world and just wrote. So yeah, I think it definitely affected my writing, affected my reading as well. Were you able to read?
not to begin with. No, I think I can't remember the first. I tell you what I did read was I read a spooky story, and I've actually got into sort of quite creepy sort of ghost ones, because I don't know whether it's sort of like a complete sort of break from reality, but I found that I can now. But yeah, for about the first month, no, I was too focused on reading the news, but I've broken away from that now.
Yeah, I really struggled. I was able to write, but I really lost my reading mojo, and that was quite scary for me, really. Not, you know, it must have been for you as well, because it's, you know, we love it.
We do. I know. No, it wasn't a good time. I just couldn't focus. I think lots of people. I don't think anybody. I think people now are getting back into it again, but I think there was a real time where people were really struggling, and people like bloggers and things were, you know, struggling to get their tours out because they couldn't get into doing it. And that's difficult when you're in that sort of. It's like trying to write, isn't it? When you've got a deadline and you've got to do it, you're like, I've got to read this. I've got another question actually from Katrina, who loves your books.
Thank you very much, Katrina.
How did you find a publisher?
That was through my agent. So if you want to become a writer, there are publishers that you can go to without an agent, and there's more and more actually, even since when I started. A lot of the digital publishers you can go straight to without an agent. But for a lot more of the traditional publishers, you need a literary agent. So yeah, it was getting my literary agent was the key to opening up the publishing industry for me. I did send it to digital first, and I didn't. They didn't pick me up. So yeah, it was through my agent, and I've got a wonderful publishing team. They're just brilliant.
I think you've so that's the way to go, really, is to get an agent first, and then because we do get asked
tough.
Well, because did I read in the back of your book that you had about 30 rejections? I mean, that's really tough to take, isn't it? 30?
It really.
I mean, I imagine one's heartbreaking, but 30 must be soul destroying.
Yeah, it really is. Like I said, I was really close. So if you're going to go down that route, you have to prepare yourself. But you know, every time you sort of see it in your inbox, you have that little exciting, and then
it must be.
Yeah, it's tough.
And I guess as well, when you see online when publishers put out the sort of submissions, don't they, where you can do that, have like a weekend where you're allowed to just email them so many words, and they get thousands. So I mean, it must be it does have to be something sort of special to stand out. But
I think making sure that your letter, I mean, agents are incredibly busy. I think at the time that I submitted to LBA, who I'm with, Amanda Preston, I remember reading that they were having like 250 submissions a week.
Wow.
And they're so busy. So I think the first thing is your letter's got to stand out. It's got to be quick, to the point. At the end of my letter to my agent, because obviously Songs with us is all about songs and music, I think I ended it something along the lines of you're the agent, in the words of Danny Zuko, you're the agent I want, the agent I need, oh yes indeed. So I think that might have just given me a little bit of a nudge, but I kept coming back to my letter and changing it, but it is tough business.
Do you have a routine? Do you write? Because I know you said in the beginning that you wrote at school in your lunchtime and in the evening. So that obviously takes quite a lot of discipline to do that. Yeah. So has that discipline sort of helped you get into a routine and say, you write at this time every day, or?
Yeah, I'm very, very disciplined with my writing, which is quite, I think would come as a bit of a shock to anybody who knows me, because I'm just disorganised in every other aspect of my life. During lockdown, because I had all my kids at home, I was getting up at the crack of dawn, big strong coffee, music in my ears, and getting my word count done then. But normally, like now things are back to normal. My kids gone back to university, my little one's back at school. I do an office day really, and I am, like I said, very disciplined. I get my bum in the chair at sort of 9 o'clock in the morning. And then that is me then until school pick up. A lot of it as well is just outside those hours is like social media, and I love hearing from my readers. I just think it's such a privilege to have this job, and you have people contacting you to tell you how your book has affected them or how much they liked it. So I try my best. I don't always get all of them, but I try my best to reply to people. So sometimes that could be like first thing in the morning. So like I'll get up at 6:30, make a cup of tea, and I'll spend like sort of 20 minutes of just some responses out. I try and put my phone away about 7:30 normally, not during publishing weeks around the week before, the week after, just because I think it's important to have that headspace. And because I love talking to all my readers so much, I think I'd just be chatting away until goodness knows what time. So
it does I put mine away, because it does, you just become distracted, and you need to be and also I think it is such a time waster. At weekends I've taken to putting it upstairs out of the way, for half of the day. Otherwise you just sit on Twitter all day and Instagram looking at books.
yeah absolutely.
It's great, but doesn't really achieve very much.
So I'm disciplined.
That's good, because I think lots of writers have different ways of doing their. Some people get up at, like you say, the crack of dawn. Some people write in the evenings. Do you write all the time, or do you have a holiday, or do you?
No, I pretty much write all the time. But yeah, I did have that week off, but then I had a new book idea, and then I emailed my agent, and she's like, "You're supposed to be having a week off, but that idea's giving me goosebumps. I'm going to ring you tonight." So, I find it really hard to not, because even if it's not the book that I'm writing, that might be like I'm editing like the previous book because it's not just out yet, or I'll have like articles to write for magazines or things like that. And I also do my own manuscript appraisals. So I look at other people's writing, which I love doing. It's a really, really lovely job. It's a real privilege. So yeah, I'm pretty busy all the time.
Yeah, sounds like
it.
No wonder your agent told you to have a week off. I think are you writing at the moment sort of a book a year, or is that what your sort of plan is?
Yeah, I write a book a year, but this year this will be the third book that I've written. So the beginning of the year I've written a romantic comedy. I fancied doing something a bit different, and that I wanted to bring out under a pen name, something a little bit further away from my darker stuff. So I've written that, and the idea was I was going to let that go cold, then write the next Emma Cooper book, call it 4A, which I did during lockdown, and then go back to the romantic comedy. Well, that one went cold and went off and sort. But then when we decided that we were going to sort of like just postpone book 4A, because it's just not its time just yet. I think just because of how the business is, it's very up and down. So now I'm writing the idea that I had on the beach. So that will be the third book.
Will that be out? When will that one be out?
Next September, I hope. I think nothing's set in stone just yet, but I think it'll probably be next September. But that's okay, because I am very disciplined. I do write quite quickly, so I should imagine I get the first draft done by Christmas. Then a couple of months of me just looking on it, editing and sending it in.
That's amazing. That is really disciplined to get to sort of be that focused and and also to have the ideas to keep. Your mind must be just full of them.
It is. I think my problem is reining them in. I have lots of ideas and I just sort of want to dive in, but sometimes you have really good ideas, you think that's brilliant, but actually when you start to think about the logistics and where the story will go from that simple idea, it's not always viable. But yeah, my problem is I have just too many ideas, and I just so I have to rein myself in.
It must be quite tiring as well. It's particularly if you said your style is to become those characters. It must be quite draining in a way to
it can be,
particularly with like Jen and Kerry. I mean, not Kerry so much, but Jen. It must have been really sort of. I guess you have to sort of try and look after yourself in that respect for that.
Yeah, and I think with Jen, as much as it was draining, there was also a lot of joy writing her.
She's
yeah,
quite funny.
but there are days that it does sort of hit you quite hard, and in fact, one of I cried quite a few times at the Songs of Us when I wrote them. There's quite a few scenes in that one that I cried, but also the first time I saw you, the scene that I cried about, I don't know whether many readers actually cried, and it's the scene, I'm not going to give too many spoilers away, it's where Samuel is looking through a window and he can see Sophie inside a house and she's with her neighbour. And that scene, I don't know whether it's because I had quite powerful classical music on or whatever, and I was so upset when I wrote it, like the tears were streaming, I had to actually step away from the computer, and I was like, yeah, so yeah, it creeps up on me sometimes, I think.
Your characters are so amazing though. I think that's the thing, is that they are really real when you're reading the books. I think sometimes the characters can be, you can like them, but I think your characters are, you really do become invested in them. And Samuel, and I can't remember her name,
Sophie,
that's it. They were just amazing. And that book, it was just, if you haven't read it, you must read it. It's so good.
thank you.
I haven't read the Songs of Us, so I must read that. I don't think I'm going to cope with it at the moment though, because that's definitely going to make me cry. I've seen so many people say that made them cry.
It did. There's lots of funny bits in the Songs of Us as well. There's a lot.
I will. It's on my list to read. What do you read? Do you have time to read, or?
Yeah, I do. Like I said, I struggled in lockdown, and I've struggled just recently, and I think that's because I've been first drafting so much this year, and I try and step away from my own genre as well. When I'm first drafting, I try and read more thrillers and historical fiction and things like that. So yeah, I do, but I've been much slower than usual. But I've read Miranda Dickinson's Our Story.
Oh, yeah.
You read that?
No, I haven't. I read she came to the library a couple of years ago. The trouble is, there's so many books, I can't remember everybody's name. But
yeah,
there's one about Seagulp. Did she do the one about?
Oh yeah, is it Somewhere Beyond the Sea? It might be that one.
Yeah, yeah. It was about St Ives, because she loves St Ives, doesn't she?
She does, yeah. Miranda's lovely. Yeah, she's really, really supportive. So I've read that, which I really enjoyed. I'm actually rereading Me Before You at the minute, because I've read it for years, and it's funny that we mentioned it earlier on, just because I think because I'm sort of struggling a little bit with reading, I think it's quite nice to just go back to something that you're familiar with.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm so lucky that I get so many proofs as well, as you do as well, don't you? It's like proofs that come out before books are, and that is such a privilege. So I'm reading at the minute The Betrayals by Bridget Collins, because I absolutely adored the binding. I could shout about the binding from the rooftops. So yeah, I'm just started that. I think the one that got me out of my lockdown funk was Beach Read by Emily Henry.
Oh, I read that one. I was on the tour for that. I had a lovely hamper.
Oh, did you? Oh,
yeah.
Lucky you.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I think I saw that. Do you have like
apparel? Yeah. I had a hat and sunglasses, and that was great.
Yeah, I love that one.
And she did a really good online interview. That was really funny. That was a really interesting book. But yeah, that I read that one in lockdown as well. Probably lots of people read that one in lockdown.
Yeah, it's a great one.
But so we're nearly at the end of our it's 20 to 8 already. We're nearly at the end of our 40 minutes. It has gone so quickly. Thank you for coming along this evening.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And I do hope at some point you'll be able to come back to Exeter in real life. It's such a strange time, isn't it, in the publishing world? And I guess that you've been busy, haven't you, doing a lot of these over the last sort of week or so.
My giant head seems to have been everywhere.
It keeps seeing you popping up on Twitter, so I was doing a chat. But no, I think you've just got to, same as us, you just have to change with, and actually in some ways it's been great for us, because Devon is sometimes quite hard for us to get authors to come to, because it's so far away from everything. So it's been brilliant for us to be able to sort of get people online, and I hope that will continue actually, because it's really accessible as well for some of our borrowers that don't and can't get out. It's not everybody can get out in the evenings or to come to the library, so
it's great. Such a gorgeous library as well.
We have a very gorgeous library. It's lovely for it's that it's open again, even if it's not in its true glory. It's sort of partially there, which is nice, because it was when the library was closed, and we were working in there sort of doing click and collect. felt like its sort of soul had been taken away. It was
I
very,
can imagine.
because it's such a busy, vibrant place, that it's beginning to get that back now. The students are back in Exeter, and it's beginning to warm up again now. But, no, we'd love to see you again,
I'd love
if
to
you could come down to Devon. So
lovely.
well, thank you for everybody for joining us. And Emma's book, If I Could Say Goodbye, is out now, and it is also ought to be available to order from Devon Libraries. So if you would like to order a copy, you can do that via our website. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. It's been so lovely to talk to you as well.
It's nice to talk to you. It's just like, it's very easy to talk to you. It's
thank
and
you.
I really enjoyed finding out a bit more about your reading and your writing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.